en Chacón, ¿no? Es en Chacón, New Mexico. Hoy es, ¿qué día estamos? 18 tiene, el día de marzo de 1992, ¿no? And we'll begin the interview. Mrs. Vasquez, do you want to begin by telling us about your childhood? ¿Dónde creció? ¿Cómo era su vida cuando era niña? Español, como usted quiera. En español, vamos a empezar en español. Ay,
Nací en Ocate, Nuevo México, condado de Mora. Entonces, todavía no éramos estado, éramos territorio en 1808.
ajá.
Y me crié ahí en Ocate. Vivíamos en lo que decían la cañada bonita. Es una cañada muy bonita. Y ahí crecí yo tenía 5 hermanos. Yo soy la menor.
¿Y la única mujer?
Era la única mujer. Tuve 2 hermanas, pero murieron sus años pasados. Así que yo era la única que crecía en esos días con mis hermanos. Y siendo yo la menor, pues me consentían mucho. Y ellos habían ido a escuela. En esos días en Ocate había habido escuela misionera presbiteriana.
Ah, ok.
Y ellos habían asistido a una escuela de la misión.
Ajá.
Y uno de ellos había asistido hasta que el libro octavo. Pero después ya no estaba, no siguió en la escuela. La escuela se cerró como en el tiempo de que yo ya empecé a ir a la escuela. Porque la iglesia tiene, es igual, pienso, cualquier iglesia. Cuando ya un lugar está listo para seguir adelante de por sí, pues cierran ellos las escuelas y que sigan las públicas para no hacerles ningún mal.
Ajá.
Así que se cerró la iglesia, la escuela presbiteriana y ya no había más escuela pública. La escuela pública era muy pobre, no teníamos nada. Y para yo tener una banca para escribir, mi papá me hizo una, y veo una silla de mi casa, porque los demás niños se sentaban en unas bancas largas.
Ajá.
Pero no había nada más, más un pizarrón y una mesita para el maestro y un calentador en el medio, y eso era todo.
Y este era el public school.
Ese era public school.
Y tenían maestros.
Tuve maestras hispanas también, y también tuve una maestra que asistió cuando era Las Vegas Normal School. Ella se llamaba Refugio Trujillo, pero después era Fernández cuando se casó, y también era de ahí, yo caché. Fue buena maestra, y con ella estuve yo, y estuve con otra que había asistido Loreto Academy en Santa Fe, Josefina Chávez. Esas fueron maestras mías. Pero las escuelas eran muy pobres, que no teníamos con qué hacer mucho.
Ajá.
Los maestros nos compraban todavía. Cuando estuve en la Loma Parda, yo compraba todo lo que se necesitaba para los niños, porque no tenían. Y a veces no podían ir a la tienda más, que no podían ir para hacer compras. Así que mis hermanos decidieron mandarme a muy tierna edad a escuela en Santa Fe.
En St. James.
A la St. James School era una escuela de presbiteriana, Girls School. Girls School.
Para
Sí, sí. Y así que fui en el libro cuarto muy chica.
muy joven.
Muy chica. Me tenía una muchacha de aquí de Mona, la pusieron que fuera mi hermana mayor, y ella me peinaba y cuidaban de mí, que me limpiara.
¿Y era la más joven? ¿Se acuerdan?
No, era la más joven. Había varias, nosotros muy chiquitas, las que jugábamos con muñecas todavía, y en nuestro tiempo que podíamos jugar. Y empezamos la escuela, pero yo me encanté en la escuela porque, bueno, las niñas ahí todas jugábamos juntas y vivíamos juntas, todas hacíamos juntas. Las maestras estaban ahí, y nos tocó una maestra que era la dorm mother, que le decíamos. Y nos daba un beso, acostaba a cada una niña en su camita en el dormitorio y nos daba un beso. Y era muy bonito que se nos hacía.
Las maestras ahí no eran hispanas, pues sí. En James House, no. ¿Venían de fuera?
No, tuve algunas hispanas. Tuve Tabita Sánchez y algunas hispanas más después. Pero en ese tiempo pienso que no había ni una hispana. Y estuvo Tomasita Trujillo también, que lo Naranjo, en Chimayo. Pero en los primeros días que fui a Addison no había maestras hispanas.
Cuando usted empezó en la escuela en Ocate, ¿hablaba inglés o hasta? O no
Yo
sé,
sí.
yo hasta.
Yo sí hablaba inglés porque en mi casa mis hermanos vieron que hablábamos inglés y español, pero no mucho. El español era lo que practicaba más, pero
Ellos ya le enseñaban.
yo supe inglés cuando fui a la escuela.
Y para cuando se fue a
Allison James ya sabía, sí, ya sabía pues. Y en Allison James nos exigía. Esa era una cosa que no sé si sería muy bueno o qué, pero nos exigían que habláramos inglés solamente. Si hablamos español nos daban lo que se llamaban Spanish marks y teníamos medio los castigaban. Ajá. Y eso no estuvo muy bueno. Y déjeme decir que cuando empecé a enseñar en las escuelas de Nuevo México, hice un reglamento que no podía la maestra hablar español a los niños. Y si sabían que les hablábamos español, nos revocaban la licencia para enseñar y no nos daban escuela.
Entonces ustedes tenían que seguir esa regla.
Teníamos que seguir esa regla en inglés. No sé qué tal estaría esto de bueno, porque había muchos niños que necesitaban uno. Y por señales o por cosas así, muchas veces no lo hacía uno entender. Y sí tenía. Y yo creo que yo quebranté la regla, el reglamento.
Más que una vez.
Sí, pero nunca me quitaron mi licencia.
¿Y cómo se sentía usted de eso? Que aquí tenía esta regla y aquí estos niños que necesitaban.
Pues por eso la quebranté, yo creo, porque vi que era necesario luego hacerme parte de ellos y que supieran lo que estaba haciendo. Y en esta escuela que enseñé a Anda Caña Bonita, tenía una familia que eran anglos, alemanes, hablaban inglés, hablaban alemán también, y yo sabía poquito alemán también, porque habíamos vivido entre alemanes y sabíamos poquito, podía comprenderlo, pero era inglés más lo que se hablaba, de modo que hablábamos inglés y español. Y lo que pasó fue que los niños anglos aprendieron el español pronto, y luego los niños que estaban de habla español se tardaron un poco más para expresarse. No querían expresarse en inglés, tenían como que se hacía que iban a ser equivocados en lo que hicieron. Y por eso no hicieron, no porque ya no comprendía. Pero pronto aprendimos los dos y ya le he podido seguir bien.
Y entonces usted en la escuela no castigaba a los niños que hablaban.
No, yo castigué por un
español,
inglés y español.
Ajá.
Y ya cuando yo empecé con libros que estaban todos en inglés. Pero más antes había unos libros que eran un lado inglés y el otro español, pero eran la misma historia.
Acá, bilingües, entonces
Sí.
tenían libros. Cuando usted empezó la escuela.
No, ya cuando yo empecé, no.
Ya no, ya
era
era todo en inglés.
Todo inglés.
Ajá.
Ya cuando yo empecé, sí, ya yo empecé con 1914, ¿ves? Ya era algo más moderno. No, ya empecé puro inglés, pero más antes de eso sí había tenido. Y había esos libros de llamaban McGuffey, Readers Your Purpose. Ahí en los archives, yo llevé unos McGuffey Readers a los archives también, pues veían inglés español. Y si tenían arriba tenían las palabras que venía uno de aprender a deletrear y las daban en inglés y español. Y teníamos que aprender en inglés y español y eso no nos gustaba. Y yo les dije una vez a mi maestra, pues si aprendo en inglés, ¿por qué tengo que aprender español? Porque era mucha dificultad aprender todo inglés y español, escribir y todo, pero teníamos que hacer.
Y cuando usted salió a enseñar, cuando se acabó en J.R. ¿no? Elton James, y usted siempre sabía que quería ser maestra. ¿Cuándo le vino el
Desde que estaba jovencita, chiquita. Yo tenía una muchachita que jugaba conmigo, mi vecinita Manuelita, y ella siempre era la escuelera y yo era la bailarina, y ella la cansaba yo. Y decía, yo no quiero ir a jugar porque la Dora quiere nada más jugar en la escuela. Ella iba a jugar, pero jugábamos también con las muñecas. Pero sí, yo quería ser maestra.
¿Y tenía algún role model o usted veía a sus maestros y decía, yo quiero ser como ella?
No tenía nada, pero quería ser maestra. Pero cuando fuimos a la escuela Addison, nos dieron, cuando ya entramos a la escuela superior, nos dieron a escoger 3 diferentes modos de ir.
Okay.
Uno era home economic, if you wanted just to be home economic, I'm sorry, cosas de eso. y el otro era a regular high school course that you would take college, sort of college entrance examination and be ready to teach and go on to college. O podías tomar the business course, which would take you into the business world. And I took the regular high school to get me into college and to teach because I knew that my brothers were wanting me to go to college. So I took that course at Addison James. So when I got out of Addison James in 26, I was ready to teach. I got my certificate to teach right away.
So your motivation in a way came from your brothers.
Yes,
You know that they would educate you.
so they would help me financially and that they would push me. And my parents were always back on me.
How about your parents? Did they want you to be a teacher? Did they support that? Or
Yes, they supported that too, but they really knew that they gave me a choice. They told me if you want to be a teacher, and the only thing they always told me never to be proud, never to have pride. That no matter how much education I had, and I came back always to be the same to Manuelita or to all my friends, to never, never. And when my brothers gave me things, or they said to share, to learn to share. And so even if I was growing alone, I wasn't selfish. But I was spoiled.
okay, now you finished high school, and you went on to your take.
Yes.
Do you remember your first job?
Yeah,
Where I was and all what you did? No, I'm proud of that.
I came back to Ocate, and Don Cosme Garcia was the superintendent in Mora County. We used to have county superintendents, good. And then Don Cosme Garcia had his relatives in Ocate, Tío Juan el Cero, and all those, and so they used to go over there. And so when I grew up, my family from Ocate contacted Don Cosme here in Nora. And Don Cosme said there was one opening, and that was Loma Parda, but that it was a very hard place because of how to get to Loma Parda. Loma Parda is on the Mora River, but it's down in the deep part of the canyon. And the roads leading from any way to Loma Parda were very bad. There was no bridge on the river. And in the spring, the river was swollen. So it was very hard to cross it. In the fall, it wasn't so bad. But it was a hard place for me to go. But I had a cousin that lived in Loma Parda from Ocate. She was married to a cowboy that had come to the area. And he used to take care of cows for Mr. Sincoli from Wagon Mound up in the Fort Union area. And they lived at Loma Parda. They had bought a little house there in Little Placita. That was a very nice little house. And so Aurora lived there. That was her name, my cousin. So when Don Cosme told me that I could go to Loma Parda, I said, but I would accept because then I would live with Aurora.
I would have a place.
I would have a place to live, and she would kind of help me get started there in the place. And Loma Parda was sort of a placita that the people lived on both sides of the street. And then there were some other farmers that lived down the canyon, but that came to school or up the other way to La Pantita, the smaller town. And we more or less were in this.
Now, were you the only teacher in this town?
Yes.
That wasn't big enough for more than one?
No. No.
So you graduated from high school and went to Loma Parda.
Yeah, and I was very young. That was my. And when
Do you remember how you felt about this first job?
yes, I think I tell you that the first day I stood that you had those cowbells to ring, and I stood at the door ringing that bell and my knees were just shaking. I didn't know how I was going to get started. And there was nothing in my schoolroom, like I said, there was nothing. I had a few papers and pencils, and that was about all. There was an old man, Don Cosme Cedevaca, that lived across from, it wasn't a schoolhouse, it was a rented room that they rented for us to have school. And he lived across the street, and he looked at me and he told his wife, oh, that teachers. Es una muchachita, voy jovencita. Los muchachos van a hacer sopa con ella.
Because there were boys that were probably almost as old as you.
I had two boys. In fact, one was older than I am. And one has come to see me he lives out in Los Angeles. And he came out to see me about 3 years ago, Pina Cedevaca and Timoteo Pais. They were the oldest boys. And they came in just to check and see La Maestra, you know. They really weren't interested in school. And they had been to school. We had teachers in Loma Parda that had gone before me. I better not say their name. But one of them had started going with one of the boys around there.
But what was all
I
that?
wasn't too good. And so the other boys and the other people didn't like her. And they finally didn't want her back. So when I went, and I was that young too, they thought it was going to be the great thing.
Well, that would be a temptation.
Yeah, but that was one of the things Aurora told me. And Thompson, her husband, said, now they were always had a teacher's dance to begin school year. A dance for the teacher. And said, you dance with everybody, you be friends to everybody, but try not to fall in love or to show any difference to anybody sick. Well, there wasn't really anybody that really cared to go around steady with anyway. And I didn't know anybody. So that night in the teacher's dance, I danced with everybody. And I think I tell about those two old cowboys that wore spurs and
their boots and their hats.
and they thought I didn't know how to polka. And I did know because one of my brothers, I used to polka with one of them. So when they knew I could polka, well, then I became the partner. So it was nice. I became acquainted. But when I had these students come in, I had three girls in the 8th grade.
They were
Young girls. Because, in fact, the one was just about as old as I am.
Yeah.
And we had to train them. They took state examinations before we went into high school. If you didn't pass your state examinations in the 8th grade, you couldn't be into high school. So you really have to tutor. I spent time tutoring those girls, especially towards the spring when they were good.
Then it would reflect on you,
Yeah.
right? If they didn't have the exam.
A teacher. But no, we started getting along all right, and I worked with the parents. I used to get this teacher's normal magazine that came out, and it gave you hints on how to teach, and it gave you hints on how to work with parents, and it was very helpful to me that I took that magazine. And with Aurora's and Thompson's help. And the big, I began.
And you had a mixed classroom. You had Hispanic children and you had Anglo children in the classroom?
I only had the two Thompson kids
Okay, so
that were paralanguage and Spanish.
okay. So what
That was only
and were you as a teacher, you were probably a very central part of that community.
Yes, I had to do everything, even for the people, write letters, interpret, translate. Sometimes they called me if anything business came up and they needed me. Sometimes I had to leave the kids with one of the older girls. If I had to go, if some Anglo people came, wanting to know something, and the other people couldn't tell. I said, "Llamen la maestra."
So you would do the translation.
Yeah, and I wrote letters for people and took care of when they were sick. Helped them with their food, with a lot of things that you had to do. The maestra was the manager.
Community.
I think I tell you there that Loma Padra was an isolated place because of its situation. And the only person that really came there was the Catholic priest from Wagon Mountain. And he was a Frenchman, Padre de Marais. Very nice person, very well educated. And he was in the Board of Education in Mora County. So it was very good for me to be there because when he came once a month, then I would get the news of what was going on in the Mora County with the Board of Education, the schools. And he was very helpful to me whenever he came out.
Were those jobs very political appointment?
Not right then yet, but they really got afterward by the 30s. Politics really got into the school. But when I first started, it wasn't that bad. When I first started, but it started about then.
Well, why do you think politics started to encroach? Was it that there were so many teachers and not enough jobs, or that people were just trying to control the education?
There was trying to control, and then you get in your relatives, and things like that. So it was a temptation to get the ones on your party.
The party,
That was the other part of it, Now, for me, it didn't make any difference. Now, I've been a Republican all my life, and I never had any trouble. Now, the governor was a Democrat, and the other, I never had. Afterwards, they said, if you were a good teacher, you'll succeed. You'll make a name for yourself. And I think that's a core. If a teacher behaves and does the things she does, I don't think that the politics would affect you as much. They never did here in Mora County for us.
But there was a
We
lot of pressure to be
But there was
and
pressure. But there was pressure, yes. I would say the pressure there was.
now how long were you at Noma Parva?
Just the 1 year.
And then where did you go after that?
I went on to school. I was given a school to teach in Ocatén,
Uh-huh.
but then I decided to go back to, it wasn't Highlands yet. It was still the loan to go back to school. I went back to school before teaching anymore.
And did you go right through and finish a degree, or no? No, you teach in the winter.
I teach in the winter. I teach in the winter and go to school in the summer. But I did go that next winter.
You went 1 full year and then went back to teaching.
Then went back to teaching.
And did you go to Ocatén?
Yes, I went back to Ocatén.
And did you feel better prepared?
I was not sure, see. I had a little more experience in every way. So I was a little more mature. And there I did have Anglos and Spanish.
And did you have any pressures from the let's say the Anglo community accepting? Did they have any trouble accepting an Hispanic teacher?
No, because I lived with right there. They were part of us and they knew Spanish. And
So there was
those Commonwealths and those Anglo people there were just sort of like, if you know the Cassidys or
from the
Sorrel people here,
they very often
they
intermarried.
always lived there with the intermarried. And
So there wasn't any pressure there or discrimination against you as an
I not with the kids.
You're not kid. When did you graduate from college? If you went summers,
I never did graduate from
you
college.
didn't. Oh.
I am up to the junior year, but I never did graduate from college because then I got married and then I quit teaching when I had my children. But I did keep on some courses. I always kept either correspondence courses or something.
And how long were you out of teaching to bring up your children? About, I'm not exactly, but you could. But they already grown up.
Yes, this Ben was already 6 years old when he started. My other two were already out. So it took me many years. I would say more than 20. You know.
So you were able to take the time out to bring up your children, and then you went
I
back.
wasn't strong enough to do both. I never failed. And then I wanted to be home when they quit my children. I brought up my children.
And then you went back to teaching?
Then I went back to teaching. And that's when we started going to teach at St. James. I taught at St. James again. I was a teacher.
Oh, you did.
And we started teaching. We left Mora County on our own.
Okay.
This was politics were getting very bad here. And these schools were mixed with politics. And we didn't care for that. And we left the public school system in Mora County. We had taught in Socorro and Valencia County. We had taught in those students. But then we decided to go into teaching into boarding schools there.
Yeah, with your husband a teacher?
Yes, yes, he also. Oh, he was a graduate of Menal School.
You graduated from Menal, and was he from your area?
No, he was from here, from Chacon.
From Chacon.
See, after I got married, I left Ocate and came to live here in Chacon. And we taught in the Chacon schools. I taught in Chacon here off at Lucan and El Alto. But then we left it, and he did too. He taught it.
Now that's interesting, being married to a teacher. Did you ever feel, in your teaching career, did you ever feel that maybe he had more privileges, or that it was easier for him because he was a man, or was it always?
I chose it because he always told me that if I wanted to, we could. But I chose to stay home then, and that he would do the teaching and do the supporting of the family while the children were growing. And he could go to school. He took more courses. Now he graduated, but Edmundo, our oldest son, graduated from Highlands before he did.
Before your father, the father.
But then I don't know how it came that Eusebio went ahead of him. Because finally Eusebio got his guidance, counseling, and certificates before Edmundo. Because I guess Edmundo kind of quit. I don't remember that, but the college degree, Edmundo got his first. Because we could teach and go to school, right? And go to school.
And so you teach in the winter, go to school in the summer, and eventually
and get our certificates. The salaries were very low. Mora County, always a low income county. We only got $100 a month. Colfax County was the best paying county. It has always been a little more wealthy, and they paid $150. And I guess San Miguel paid around that too.
And then you and your husband both went to teach at Alma State,
Yes.
and you taught there many years? Or how long did you?
We were there 5 years. And then we went up, being that it's a church, there were church schools.
Right.
They transferred us to Wasatch Academy in Utah, in Conference. And we retired. We stayed there until we retired. Right? We retired from there. But in the boarding schools, you could live right there. They gave you housing and everything. And it was much easier than the public schools.
And you prefer teaching in the boarding?
And you didn't really teach. You didn't make anybody be any kind of a religion that you wanted.
It was just
Let them be whatever they want, as far as their belief was concerned. But they were Presbyterian schools, and they did get Bible. That's the only thing they got in the Christian school that would give something.
Now, going to Utah must have been very interesting and very different for you.
Very different, very different. So we left the Spanish field here, where we were with the Spanish people. It was a different environment than ever.
Did you adapt easily, or were there problems? Do you remember ever having any problems?
Well, I'll tell you, Wasatch Academy is a multi-race school. I guess we had kids from Thailand, Africa, Mexico, and all the park areas where kids were far from schools,
Right.
national park, Arizona and Colorado. We had students from every nationality, I think, that you could see. Indians.
So having teachers,
So it was really good. It was really good because we learned to mix and learn to live with people. And then we were in the dorms. And it happened that I went to dorm life. I took the younger boys' dorm, and my husband had the older boys' dorm. We were separated. The mission school separated us. And I lived with the younger boys in that dorm, and he lived with the older boys in the other dorm. And it was very challenging. I had the junior high boys, which were from 7th to 10th grade. And he had the 11th and 12th grade boys. And where they were with me, I used to tell them they were regular rascals. I had such a hard time with them. By the time they went to Sage, they were mature and well behaved,
because you had training them.
And I used to get so mad. I said, "Why did you give me such a hard time?" And they said, "Oh, Mrs. V," they used to call him Mrs. V. "Oh, Mrs. V, we didn't give you a bad time." But that was just boys growing up. But they obeyed in those schools in that time. That was our good luck, that the students still obeyed the rules of the school. They disobeyed a lot of rules, but more or less, to stay in the schools, they had to more or less live by the rules, like certain lights out at certain times. One study later, they would get permission for late study, things like that.
Did you retire in Utah and come back to teach here, or
No.
you never taught again?
We never taught again. My husband was going to go back. We did start doing substitute teaching. I started here in Foreman doing substitute teaching. But they only paid you for $18 a day. And the substitute teacher would have to go by 8 and stay until about the last bus left. And it was very hard. And I didn't feel
And lots of hard work.
we didn't continue doing substitute teaching here. We just quit. We just retired. But finally, we didn't get a state pension. See, we didn't teach enough years to get state pension. So we only had the retirement from the pension flat of the church. That's the only.
Now, you've also, in addition to being a teacher for a good part of your life, are a writer.
Yeah.
The one book here, The Enchanted Dialogue of Loma Parda and Cañada Bonita, that you talk about your first teaching job.
Yeah.
And the second one is Enchanted Temples of Taos, My Story of Rosario, which is a beautiful book. When did you write this?
I started writing some of those stories from the time I was in Loma Parda, I think. I used to stay at night because I didn't have things to do in Loma Parda, like socializing or things. I would be in my room. And I started I still have that big chief tablets where I started longhand writing some of my stories that I was remembering that Rosario used to tell me. And my mother, I started writing it since then, but it never came to be a book until 1975.
So you just kept
That was my third edition. I think this is the second edition you've had there.
How did you No. But how did you finally get them published?
My husband, and after the boys grew up, they always wanted, Mama, write your book and let's make a book out of it. Well, we didn't have the means to do it, really, see. But when I got all these stories put together that I thought I had it more or less into a book, I took him to Alice Bullock, who was Mr. Bullock's husband, the one that had Rydell Press. She was a writer. Alice Bullock, yeah, I know her. And she read my book and she said, oh, Dora, this is positive. It has to become a book. And she told her husband, why don't you publish it for her? So they said they would take it. And I asked them how much they wanted, and they said they wanted $500 down. You know, and we were going to go to Albuquerque then. So my husband went over with me, and we made a loan. So coming back, we paid the $500, and they took my book. And he made the first edition. And when I did it, Mr. Bullock told me, let's make 4,000 books. I said, oh, no, what if my book doesn't sell, you know, and then it was going to be very expensive. Even that it ended up to be, it was going to cost, it cost $330 to publish this book. We sell it for $550 in order to make something. And but it didn't start selling for $550, it started selling for $450. And then Mr. Bullock himself was the one that raised the price. We decided to make 2 subs. I said, make 2 subs. And if I lose out, I wouldn't lose out that much. I could give them away or something. But no. And he told me, you wait and see. 2,000 are going to sell before 2 years, and then you're going to have to come back, and it's going to cost you more. Picture was true. I had to go back and make my second edition.
So it's sold in 2 years.
Yeah. So that Towns was good to me. Towns started selling this book in no time.
Mm-hmm.
And Santa Fe and Towns, and even Las Vegas, they started selling, the book started, this book sells good even today.
Yeah, it does.
Everywhere they have it nearly.
And is Rosario, you grew up with her then? She took care of when
It was your our nurse grandma, our nurse. She, when Padre Martinez died, you know, she was Padre Martinez's maid.
Right.
And when he died, she chose to go with my grandfather and my grandmother. And they left Taos and went out to the Ocotee Valley because their lands were so fertile for raising good
effort for farming
cattle and sheep. So when we went to Ocotee, Rosario went with my family. And she helped her growing up. She was like a grandma. And I was the smallest, so she always la crió, and me crió muy consentida. And what I am sorry to this day, like I say, I didn't learn that Navajo song that she used to sing to you. I wish I could have learned it, but I think I was small then and I didn't learn it. And after I grew up, then after that, I didn't.
So she used to tell you the story.
She used to tell me all these stories about her Martinez, all these stories that I have hidden. And then my mother would verify. I would go to my mother, Mama, Mayayo, we called Rosario, Mayayo. Maya told me this, and she'd say yes, and she'd tell me a little more, something more about the family. So I put it together, and
just picking what you'd heard from all of the women and other people in your family.
Yeah, mostly my children, and they do it. Maya.
Did she raise your mother also?
Yes, she raised my mother. She raised my mother from the time she was a baby, and mi tío Bernardo Romero. She raised them both. Mi tío Bernardo lived in Vegas. He's in New Mexico history quite a bit, and his pictures in one of those books by Twitchell. I think it is on Twitchell's book or Reed's.
He was involved in the political newspaper.
Not much politics, but in history. In history, in New Mexico history. But he had more of the history around the Huatos area, the Ocotee area, and that area. But I think it's Twitchell and Reed both in the New Mexico history. They both mentioned him at all. But he was, Mayayo brought them both. They were just the two.
Rosario was important in your life.
Very important. Very important. And I loved her very much. And I'd say she lived like we thought she was going to live, you know, we were going to have her like for always. But well, the time she went.
How old were you when she died?
I was married, and it was in about 31, 32. Now, how old was I?
So you were already grown up?
Yes, I was married because I took my husband. He's the one that took the picture to see her when we got married. So, 28.
That one.
28 was when we took that picture, but it never came out.
We might want to show this picture of Rosario.
How old was Rosario when she died?
And that's a 6,000.
Oh, is it?
She might have been around 120 because she tells of coming from Navajo land at the time when the Spaniards and the Indians were still having so much trouble. And then she was still alive when the Civil War ended, when she got her independence and she could afford to live by herself. So it made her a very...
It was a picture of Mrs. Vasquez too that we might want to.
Now that's a long time ago. Oh, yeah, that's the better one than today.
So when she got her freedom after the end of the Civil War, when the president declared freedom for all slaves and servants, did she chose to stay with her family?
Yes. When Padre Martinez told her that because she had run away, I think, several times, and Padre Martinez had always had to pay more to get her back, but he always wanted her because she was a good person, a good working person, and they liked her in the home. So when he told her that she was free to go, then she started crying. She said, "Well, do I have to?" And she said, "No, you don't. But if you want to go, you can go. You can take Soledad, and I'll buy you land and property, and you can have a home, and that you have no worry about not being supported. I'll give you enough to live on for you and Rosario." Where she didn't want to go, except she came with my family to Ocate. Now, when she came to Ocate, they did give her part of my grandfather's ranch was divided into half. He gave to Rosario, and by that, after she came to Ocate, she had 3 sons.
Which she married?
No,
And
but she had 3 more.
And what happened to her family, her sons and her daughter?
They're all dead now. They lived in Pueblo. They left Ocate. They sold that land that was after my aunt died. One of the sons died there, and then the other 2 sold and went to live in Pueblo when they were there.
And you lost contact with them, or
Yes, I lost contact. There's only one person that calls me sometimes from Denver, and that's the daughter of one of the she would be a great granddaughter to Rosario. And she was trying to prove that she was Indian, but I don't know how she could prove, her Indian blood.
Well, certainly your book would have.
That's what someone took her. You finally took my book, but I never known if she finally proved that she had Indian blood in order to go to school, too.
What was her name, Senora?
Her name was, do you want to do it, Denver? It's Shonita something, but I forget what her last name.
Do you remember what the names of Rosario's son, the last name was?
The Romero? Oh, they continued with the Romero. We are in
Romero.
Yeah, they continued. But I know what we know what the real name was. It was another Spanish man that lived there, and Rosario lived with her. But he was also a widow. I'm trying to think. And she had the boyfriend. Okay. But they continued with our name.
How old was she when she was captured, when she was taken as a slave?
We figured she might have been around in her teens. She had Soledad already. She'd been married in Navajo land. And she had Soledad. But she must have been very, very young. She could have had Soledad as small as 13 or nowadays sometimes we had it.
Yeah, even younger. But she could have. It was not uncommon.
Do you know what happened to her husband? Was he killed?
He was killed in one of those battles with the Spaniards. That's when she got so mad at him. That's when she was so mad at the Spaniards, because she saw when her father, her husband, and her brother were killed in that canyon up. She said Navajo land. I don't know just exactly where it was.
It sounds from the book that when she told you these stories, that you were able to capture her sorrow and her sense of loss of freedom.
Yes. And she spoke a broken Spanish. Like she said, I can't use the word asinita. Like asinita. Asinita, y yo cuando yo estaba como tú, yo corría, yo subía lomas corriendo. So just running real fast. And things like that. And she would say, and when she started telling me, sometimes I would cry with her when she was telling me, like when she saw her father die and everything. But then when they saw that she had the baby, they left her alone and they brought her with the baby. And so when they brought her to the house, Padre Martinez bought her right away. But somebody else bought Rosario. I think that they
Right, you tell it in here.
but the Padre Martinez saw that Rosario was very unhappy. She said, I want to do. I'll go buy Soledad. So they bought Soledad. He bought Soledad too. And then we had Soledad and Rosario together growing up in Jocafat. And she was my tia all the time until she died.
Rosario or Soledad
Soledad.
was brought up as a tia. So she was brought up as part of the family.
Claro, that's Ramti. That's Ramti.
But I think you captured those feelings in the book in kind that you tried to capture her feeling for the landscape, especially for freedom.
I have been very impressed that people have captured the feeling when they read the book. And they say they do. And there have been many people that bought the book in the Feria Artesana in Albuquerque and read the book and came to town the next day to go see the place and everything else. They were so impressed with it.
Now, you seem to be very motivated when you wrote this book to tell a story that would stand in answer to another book that existed about Father Martinez.
Yes.
That you, when you read Willa Caffrey's book, you were not very happy about that book, right?
And there is a book that Juan translated, Memorias del Padre Martinez. Don Pedro Sanchez had written as Memoria. And that's a book that I had on, that I wanted to impress too, that there was good things about the Padre and the other people had written about the Padre and known the Padre themselves. There were some of his own students, who
were writing. Sanchez was his student, right?
Well, yes. The first Don Pedro, there were 3 Pedros, and that's kind of where the older Pedro wasn't. And then the second Pedro was. And the younger Pedro grew up in Ocate now. He didn't even know Padre Martinez, but he knew the story that his father had written. And then Juan translated it into English. I was just reading it the other day.
I haven't seen her translation. I know the Spanish. I'm not in that, but I haven't read Bondi translated. We can look at it. Yeah. No.
See, right there, I have some books right behind that chair. See if Juan's is there. No, behind the chair. In a little stand. No, that's not it.
And did she,
that's it. No, that's Shadows of the Past by Cleova. Maybe I have it here. I have it here, I think. Maybe I have it.
Lift the Shadows of the Past.
Y esta es la de Córdoba.
The Córdoba. She has them all.
Oh, I have it there. Exactly.
Okay, we'll find it and take a look at that. So you wanted to write a more true story about
Padre Martinez. We have to wait until they have before we test it. What? I know that. No, I thought it sounds like. But everything I find is them sluts. So go find it.
Yeah, we can take a look.
But anyway, she has, and you can get it in town.
Okay.
I think the Kachina bookstore should have it. But she'll know where.
Yeah, we'll ask her.
Yeah.
Now, when you wrote your story, did you, of course, the women who are best known, the writers from the before were Cleofas, Jaramillo, and Fabiola Cedevaca for We Fed Them Cactus, and the other one is Nina Otero Warren. Did you consider yourself like part of that generation?
Oh, did you ever is part of that? I never thought I would ever be a writer like that. And yeah,
but did they inspire you a little bit? Did you say, well, they told their story, I can find mine too?
Did you ever say that? I think so. And Adelina Otero Warren, I met her when I was going to Alson Jen. She used to live in that big house. Just down from where Alson Jim was.
Oh, I think.
And I talked to her a lot of times as a little girl. I would go get some of this history from New Mexico. And I think she did inspire me that, but I didn't tell her that I wanted to write, I don't think. But she knew I was interested in stories. And she would encourage me telling me more stories.
And here it is. Yeah, Memories of Antonio Jose Martinez.
First she wrote it all in English, in Spanish, I think it is.
That's the
and then she translated it into, and then she tells about, there's Don Pedro.
So she does the translation.
She does it.
And then
I think that's wonderful.
The text. And this the Chacon.
Rafael Chacon, sí. And the other one that you saw, that one, that's it. Adiós, mi tía encantada. What did you do with that little orange?
This is the Cleopatra.
No, ese es de...
Oh, I know.
Alfonso Griego.
Griego, right.
Oh, yeah.
I forget. Pero el que estaba en la José
He's one of his...
no recuerdo ni, pero Villanueva.
Había,
Por ahí, ¿no?
día de la Jarita. One of his brothers just died. They just buried him today, last week, I guess. Yeah, in San Jose.
So what other things were you involved in besides being a teacher? I know, for example, when we talked to Josephine Cordova, she's very involved in the historical society. Have you been in?
I still belong to the Kit Carson Historical Society. I spoke a lot, lectured. I lectured a lot at different places. I've always had the gift of speaking, I think. I'm at both State College and in different places to lecturing in Spanish history or whatever, on this northern New Mexico more. And I still belong to the South Historical Society, to the Kit Carson. And now I'm more involved because of the Martinez Hacienda.
You're involved in that?
Yeah, the Martinez Hacienda. And so I've been involved in historical.
I would say that looking at your life, that given the history of our people, the loss of land, the sometimes poverty and isolation, that you had a very exemplary life, a very unique life. What do you owe that to? What do you think accounts or how
We had I've had a fulfilled life, and I've done the things I wanted to do, and because we weren't rich, but we weren't too poor, so I had the means to do the things I wanted to do, or more or less they helped me get the means. And somebody like my helpmate started this publishing my books. Before that, I had my family that always supported my ambitions or dreams.
And it sounds like your family brought you up with the belief that education was important.
Yes, education was important, and behavior, the way they always told me to be a lady. Wherever I went, when my brother left me and my father, that's the first thing he said, remember always to be a lady. And things like that, that they weren't going into details, but you could get what they meant.
Uh-huh. And what about maybe I don't know if you'd want to talk a little bit about growing up in a separate culture, Hispanic culture, and then as your life goes on, having to interact more and more with a different culture, particularly with Anglo culture. How was that?
My life was different. These people that have come up from the Spanish plazas, now they've been Spanish completely. But I grew up in the Ocate area, and people had come in with the Civil War. When the Fort Union started, there were Confederate soldiers that stayed afterwards and lived there in the Ocate area. So that we grew up with Germans around us and different kind of English people, Indian, Mexicans. So I grew up not in a completely Spanish way.
So ever since you were little, you were had experiences with different people.
I had the experiences today in Cañao and in Ocate. So that, and if you go to Ocate yet, there's hardly anybody left now. It's almost getting to be a ghost town. But there's mixed people yet. So then they're waiting to marry.
Did you believe that your own culture would ever be an obstacle to being what you wanted to be or accomplishing what you wanted to?
I began to see that afterwards. As I was already a teacher and grown up and began to see the strength thing coming up. And we began to see that it's what's going to be harder for our children. Unfortunately, my boys were able to do the very same things all those Anglo boys ever did in Vegas, go to Highlands, take all the different opportunities in education that all those Anglo kids got. But by the time Ben grew up, then it was really getting to be this Chicano movement. And I was sort of concerned when how Ben was going to go. And he went down to New Mexico State to get his master's, where he had gone from the university and went to New Mexico State and got his master's in bilingual education. But fortunately, and in my family, it didn't go bad enough. We always stayed neutral in that respect. And I tried to counsel, like, I think you know Anselmo Adriano, the
Yeah.
writer. But Anselmo, when he was in Springer, sort of went, you know, so that he was having his, why were we being treated the way we are? He was going around with attention. And not with a master much attention. And so they kind of were thinking very deeply into this. And I admire them for the way they thought of things. But I, when I talked to Anselmo one time, I did ask him. I said, why didn't you grow up in Colfax County? And in Colfax County, like I say, you had to speak English because it was an Anglo county. There were more Anglos than Spanish. He said, yes. So then he began to think, and they've done a wonderful way of putting it together in his books. He's got Rosa Anselmo and Atencio has come very good. And even Gavino Rendon, they've come a long way in doing things for the Hispanics in a very nice way, finally, that have brought up more of our culture to what it should be instead of just.
How do you feel about bilingual education? Do you think it was a good thing? Do you think it's something that maybe our people could have profited from in past generations?
I have mixed feelings on that because now our Spanish kids don't know Spanish when they go to school, hardly. So it's necessary that they learn Spanish with the English. It's very important that they know both languages or more if they can have them. Languages are very important. But at the time that I grew up, we needed the English. And we spoke in Spanish. We needed more English. But I think it was necessary to have both. And then now that kids are growing, I think they need the Spanish. So I think the bilingual education program is a very good program in New Mexico. There are a lot of people that are against because it has been more expensive, I think. Yeah, I think training bilingual education teachers. But that has also helped the Anglo teachers because we think they have learned Spanish.
I wonder though, let's say that when you were children in school or are from my parents, if you had come to the schools and they said, well, you already speak Spanish, we're going to teach you English, but at the same time, while you're learning the English, we're going to teach you to read and write Spanish. That they would have advanced so much faster if they had had literacy right away. I often wonder if that would have been.
Where did you go to school?
Well, I went to school in Harding County, which was part of Roy. Well, my mother was a teacher. I went to Roy to sister school a couple of years, and then my mother was a teacher out in the boondocks and Apple House in Rosebud.
How would you have felt if they had made you?
Well, see, in my situation, we couldn't because it was all Anglos. We were the only Hispanic children.
Yeah.
But I lived in Mexico when I was a child for a year. My father went to work in Mexico. We went to live there. And at the age of 8, I was taught to read and write in a language that I already spoke. I think that was very positive for me. I think that it would have been good for all our people from the early years to learn to read and write Spanish and
English. I see them on TV now, and it's so nice to see that they're doing it in both languages. And like I say, they had gotten the German from the German. Let them get German too, and you're Indian. Yeah. I had a friend when I was going to Highlands from the Indian reservation from Gallup, and he didn't want his little girls to learn Indian. Well, and I said, why? And he said, because it's English now. I said, but how much more wonderful what it will be if they know Navajo and English and Spanish. He spoke Spanish and all of those languages. Say, I wanted to learn Spanish, but he didn't want to learn their own Indian language. And I think your own language should be, by all means, whatever it may be, they should teach your own language and other languages they should.
Would you have any advice for teachers today from your experiences? What have you learned from being a teacher that you could say to them? You know, if you do things like that,
to respect your students from the very beginning. Respect and let them know that you're telling them the truth and that you are living what you are teaching. If you don't live what you teach and you don't respect them, I found that out that respecting my students was one of the best things I could ever have done. Because I knew that, and their ideas, sometimes they have good ideas. Let them tell you their own ideas and accept them from sometimes even those smaller kids have good ideas to tell you.
What are the most pleasant memories of your teaching career? What was the best part of it?
Well, Loma Panda was my richest bit, my first and really something unique with those older people that I had to learn to live to be a lady, learn to teach, learn to help others in so many ways that I think that outstands any of my other teaching years. But as I say, when I went to boarding schools with mixed cultures, I think that also opened new worlds for me because I could see the Africans from Africa and how they had come to the United States and in many cases not being treated the way they should. And yet they were persons just like we were and so eager to learn that when they came to our schools, they were chicos that they could room with all the Anglo boys. We didn't put them separate. And the boys from Thailand, I remember one boy came from Thailand, and I put him with an Anglo boy as a roommate so that he could get the English. The Anglo boy was a son of a doctor. I said, when you help him here and learn his English, but the boy was also wanting to learn how to speak it in Taiwan. But it was very helpful. It's very helpful to learn to live together with people. I think you have to learn to have a positive way of life. If you have a positive way of life, you have peace. But if you don't have those things, you have envy and shall I say discrimination. Then you're not a real person. You haven't been trained completely. You haven't